here with Ryan Weeks, the Chief Information Security Officer for Datto. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing very well.
Cool. Chief Information Security Officer, what does that mean?
Well, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different companies. At Datto, what it means is I am ultimately responsible for the information security of Datto's own company and its own internal corporate systems and infrastructure. It also means that I play an active role with our product teams, thinking about security inside of our products and what we can do to extend the security and security functionality of our products to better aid our MSPs in the work that they do to help their end customers. And I do a lot of MSP education, outreach, speaking, and I'm currently on a crusade to unite all of the channel vendor technology security teams together in a fight against kind of the endemic threat that MSPs seem to be facing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So your role, no mean feat at the moment, given the current climate.
Pretty broad, but I'm really lucky to have an amazing team that I've been able to build over the past few years, and a company that truly believes in the important work of security. So it makes getting out of bed and coming to work to fight the good fight really easy to do every day.
And what's your background in information security?
So I always knew at a young age that I wanted to be in networking and network security, and I was exposed to this concept of intrusion detection at a very young age, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. And so I actually oriented all of my studies. Information security wasn't really a formal area of study when I went to university, so I kind of built my own set of courses, had some business, had some software engineering, some IT systems, and kind of had our own little club of people that like to break things and put them back together. And eventually wound up doing contract work for vulnerability management, and then found my way into financial services and just grew through the ranks over the years and ran a global information security program for a fintech company, dealing with protecting and storing very sensitive information in a cloud environment. And then the Datto thing just kind of dropped out of the sky into my lap, and I really felt like I could take all the really kind of intense study and experience that I'd had through that entire life cycle and apply it to help small and medium-sized businesses through MSPs. And one of our missions is to bring enterprise-grade security to managed service providers. And so that really resonated with me when I was interviewing with Datto, and was one of the huge reasons why I joined. And I've been able to have a tremendous impact and just really enjoy what I do every day. So that's my background at a very broad level.
No, I love it. And Datto have clearly chosen the right man for the job here. You are a very busy man.
Yeah.
I want to dive into something that you've already touched upon, really. These are difficult times for MSPs. They are being targeted by criminals. Mm-hmm. Now, I use the term criminal. Most people would say hackers, but these are criminals that are going in. These are not people that are playing around. These are people who are trying to do damage and make a lot of money off doing it. What's the broad advice that you're giving to Datto partners on how MSPs can stay safe in the current climate?
Yeah, the kind of sound bite that I have for MSPs, and I'll steal from kind of the airline industry. MSPs, put your oxygen masks on first. Right now, we saw a pretty seismic shift in the threat landscape around this time last year, September of 2018, where MSPs started to become the focus of attack because their supply chain to interesting end customers that attackers want to attack. And MSPs traditionally do a great job of protecting their end customers, but sometimes maybe neglect, through no fault of their own internal program, because they're doing such a good job protecting their end customers. And so I think we're just at an inflection point where MSPs really need to stop and look at the things they're doing to protect themselves, their technology ecosystem, because right now they're effectively co-sharing risk with their customers. The risk of their customers' risk is their risk, and their risk is their customers' risk. And I think they really need to start viewing it that way. And there's a lot of really tactical advice, but at the broadest level, it's time to start looking at your own programs and getting your own houses in order. And I don't know how to make it any simpler than that, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's really it. And that, again, that can mean a lot of things. And MSPs have thousands of questions about what should I do, and what's the next control I should buy. And in some instances, it's looking for the next piece of technology to buy and sell. But a lot of times, it's like just go back to the basics. Look at your people and your process, and get your basic IT hygiene in order before you try to do anything more advanced, because a lot of these cyber criminals, I won't call them hackers like you, it is cyber criminals, they're not doing anything exceptionally interesting. They're doing basic living off the land techniques, stealing credentials, existing vulnerabilities, poor hygiene, like RDP open to the internet. So it's just, if you focus on simple things, you can actually really reduce your exposure. You don't need to have the best technology, but I think a lot of MSPs are both interested in kind of shoring up that basic IT process hygiene, as well as bringing in some kind of advanced technology to help make sure that they're protected for themselves and their customers.
Yeah.
And I think the channel is really, there's been like a rallying cry in the last year to kind of bring ourselves together on this, and we've been doing a lot more, certainly interacting with our partners and trying to build a community of education sharing and engagement, and bringing up competitors together in the name of we can compete out there in the broader market. And during the keynote, we were talking about the size of the MSP market. There's more than enough to go around. We are facing an endemic threat right now, and the only way we're going to get through it is if MSPs and all the channel technology vendors band together and really start fundamentally changing the way we think about securing ourselves and our customers.
Absolutely, because the bar needs to be raised. As you say, the bar is actually quite low. When we look at it, these are, whilst there are a lot of sophisticated criminals out there, there's also a lot of people that are just taking advantage of really basic vulnerabilities. The advice that I give to MSPs is to eat their own dog food. I guess we're in France, Ryan, so we should say drink your own champagne.
Yes.
But yeah, anything that an MSP would advise their customers to do, to have a look at their own systems and make sure that they've got that in place for themselves.
Yeah. I think certainly most of these attacks that we've seen, when I say we, I mean the broader security teams at other channel technology vendors that I interact with on a daily or weekly basis, are not seeing a lot of these MSP targeted attacks in Europe, Australia, or Asia Pac, and we don't really know why. There's no reason for this geo to not be focused. But what I would say specifically to MSPs here in Europe and outside of kind of North America, you have an opportunity to learn from what's happening in the US before it spreads here. And so while it might not be happening to you in your area right now, don't let that make you complacent. There are things that everybody all across the world need to be doing. And that's why when Datto pushes out security improvements or mandatory 2FA for RMM or any security control we have, we're doing it across the globe, because when we look at what the motivations of these attackers are and what the exposures of MSPs are, there's no logical reason why they couldn't focus on this region. And so we're saying we're going to stick, it's the best thing for MSPs as a whole. So we're not focused on just protecting US and Canadian partners. We're focused on protecting every Datto partner across the entire ecosystem in the entire world.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I think probably a lot more we could say on that topic as well. But
probably we could probably talk for hours. But I want to pick up on something that you talked about, and this is the mandatory two-factor authentication, the multi-factor authentication. I really applaud this. I think this is fantastic, because the only way the industry is going to move forward is if we take the lead and start saying this is necessary. How did you arrive at that decision?
It was actually once you make the decision, it's actually very easy, but getting to the point of making it was quite difficult. We kept seeing attackers use RMM technologies to exploit MSPs and their customers. And it wasn't necessarily always the fault of the technology solutions provider. And so we, at Datto, or at least what I've done at Datto, is I brought this mentality of a shared responsibility for security. MSPs and Datto share in their responsibility to protect their technology. And so there's just a lot more that we can do. And we looked at our MFA adoption rates, they were exceptionally low. And it's just such a basic control. Like, we'd not seen a single, across the entire channel, at that point, when we had made the decision, we had not seen a single attack against an MSP that had 2FA be successful.
Wow.
And so we were like, it's just so basic. And we were seeing other channel technology vendors struggle with the decision whether or not to do it. And one of the things I love about Datto is we're able to make those hard decisions. We noodled on it in the executive team and with my team, with product, and ultimately decided, we're going to make this hard decision. And we decided to do it in a way where we announced our intention to do it, but we also went through a period of feedback, because we're like, hey, we want to do this. Like, we're more than 90% sure this is a thing we're going to do, but if we're way off the mark, you should tell us. And we got, I think over 100 responses, most of them overwhelmingly positive. And so we just decided that it was, the time is right. The MSPs were behind us, and it was just something that we needed to do. And we were going to take a leadership position in the market and say, we're going to be the first RMM to require two-factor authentication for all of its users, and we're still on that path. And as you heard Matej speak about in the keynote, we're doing it in a way that not only solves the security piece, but we also listen to the feedback about usability, and we're merging those two things together as we're delivering this functionality. And that's I think something else that is really important to me at Datto, is merging pragmatic solutions with security and usability in mind. Right? I don't want to create a brick that no one can use. I want it to be a secure and usable experience. And so for really healthy collaboration with our product teams, and I'm excited about the direction that's going and the roadmaps we're building. And I think there's just so much that we can do to help MSPs in that shared responsibility model. And I expect many more awesome announcements to come in the next couple of years as we start delivering on that roadmap. But it starts with helping MSPs do basic things right. And we have a lot of work being done right now to help MSPs adopt best practices on our BCDR appliances. We are starting those in the US, where the attacks are mostly endemic, but we will eventually roll those out globally. And MFA with RMM, and that's eventually going to bleed into all products. Yeah. Because we just believe that that's a table stakes control that MSPs need to be using for all of their technology. And if you have that belief, you have to drink your own champagne.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I applaud the move to to lead with this. You're a market leader, and where you lead, other people are going to follow, and this is going to be good for the IT industry as a whole.
That's the hope. And I think in that idea of leading and having everyone else follow, that's why we're not just focused on Datto technology. We're also working with other channel technology providers to build an ecosystem of threat intelligence sharing and collaboration, talking about protection mechanisms that are working, how we're detecting MSPs attacks and preventing them. And there's this whole kind of grassroots effort that started after DattoCon San Diego, where channel security vendors have been banding together. Really started with Datto and Huntress, and we have just been slowly building this ecosystem, and we've been doing some pretty amazing things. And I think as we come out of dark mode in the next few months, we'll have some pretty interesting stories to share about some of the wins that we have out of that community. But we're still trying to grow it, because it's my belief that, again, with an endemic threat, the only way we're going to get through it together, and if we're going to get through it together, we have to have a community built where we can share that information. And my belief is it starts with the vendors, but it eventually needs to be handed off to the MSPs. And so we're moving in that direction. So I'm also focusing a lot of effort in my quote unquote free time to building this ecosystem of collaboration, so that we can better protect MSPs regardless of the technology that they use. Because as you know, Datto's an open ecosystem company. And so I care about every MSP that we have, regardless of the technology they use. And so I think I have the ability to help, bring enterprise-grade technology to MSPs, and that doesn't stop at Datto. I'm here to help the whole channel, and so however I can do that, I feel like I wake up every morning with that feeling, that responsibility.
I love it. Now, before we sat down and had this conversation, I spoke to a number of people in the industry, and I said, tell me about Ryan Weeks. And the feedback I got was, you're one of the smartest, most turned off guys in this industry. I can absolutely see why. Before we go, and I know you're a busy man here at DattoCon, are there any awesome resources that you would recommend to the listeners to this podcast to go and check out with information security? What do you use on a daily basis to keep yourself up to date?
What do I use on a daily basis? I have a really good network of relationships that I've built. In my early days, I used podcasts. I found news publications that I really liked, and I would make sure to read those, listen to podcasts on the way into work or what have you. Now it's these communities and these networks that I built that I find help me keep me up to date. And my team, I have an amazing team that I built, and we're constantly communicating with each other about what's going on. But I think it really comes down to you just have to have a deep curiosity about what's going on and why it's going on and how it's happening. And if you build that curiosity, you're naturally going to gravitate towards the information resources that give you the tactical advice on how to protect yourself. And so I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all methodology, but I think the commitment to entering into the space and to understanding it is where it starts. And I don't care whether your entry point is, you're going to read, a certain publication every day or a podcast, or you're going to go and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to adopt the NIST cybersecurity framework, or I'm going to make my MSP ISO 27001 compliant. It doesn't matter to me how you enter it. It really just comes down to a commitment. And once you make that commitment, you'll find that you're naturally finding the resources you need. And your listeners should know that there are a lot of other people like me in the channel space that want to help MSPs improve their capabilities, and we have lots of advice. We recently did a webinar with Huntress, ID Agent, and ConnectWise, where we kind of opened to all MSPs, all ecosystems geographically. We shared a lot of information about how to get started, the attacker tactics that we're seeing, and the actionable intelligence. I would say, if you really want a quick crash course, just go watch that webinar and you'll get a lot of really decent information and advice. But yeah, there's again, we could probably talk for an hour on that.
We could do a podcast all about those resources.
Maybe we should. Yeah, if your listeners want it, let us know, and maybe we'll do one. It'd be great.
I would love to, and we'll include those resources that you talked about in the show notes for this episode as well. But Ryan, it's been a real pleasure to sit down with you. Thanks for making the time to chat with me.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for your time as well. This has been great.
Cheers. Emily Glass, Chief Product Officer. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. We are here in Paris at DattoCon 19.
On est ici à Paris.
See, I knew you were going to do this. After I saw you speak on stage, and I was like, how long before I get spoke out in French and I reveal myself to be the ignorant Englishman?
Okay, we'll stick to English today then. A little local flavor because, we're in Paris.
And talking of ignorance, on my part, Chief Product Officer, talk to me about a typical day for you. What does that role entail?
Oh, geez. A lot of different things. So I have a big group of product management, design, and also our Scrum Master team at Datto, but also obviously executive responsibilities. So there's a little bit of everything, sort of thinking about the future of our products, chatting with partners about today's issues as well, right? And keeping that good grounded balance, managing team issues, hiring, because Datto is always growing. So hiring new product folks, designers to the team is always a challenge, or to the company at large as we're growing and expanding globally as well. So there's a little bit of everything, some product management, some people management. Yeah,
you are kept
never
busy.
Dull, never dull, no.
Now, you've had an interesting path to the role at Datto. For people who are not familiar with your work, tell us a bit about your background.
Sure. So I grew up in Montreal and I have a computer engineering degree, and I moved to Boston a while ago. And through various pathways, startups, some not, I came to work at Backupify, and Datto happened to acquire them at the end of 2014. So that's how I came to be at Datto. And for anyone who's been through an acquisition, small or large, you're kind of almost starting a new job at that point. You don't know the people, it was in a different place, headquartered. So it was a matter of navigating to my current place. And luckily, I think I got to spend a lot of time as customer experience officer, really dealing with the challenges of the product and the partners to get a great understanding of their business and their needs before moving into this role. So I think it was a great sort of training ground for my job today.
Very cool, very cool. Now, I've seen you get very excited when you talk about the Datto networking products before. I can see you getting excited now. But why did you get so excited about it? What is it about the Datto networking products?
I think it's a very interesting challenge. First of all, it's one of our newer lines, and I don't know if you've chatted with John Tippett or the product and engineering team, but they're a very sort of passionate group around the mission of bringing networking gear and solutions to partners in a way that's built for MSPs. And so there's a bit of a technical sort of bundling, but also the way that the solution is managed is really tailored to MSPs. And then we get a lot of feedback, and that's how we build the product. So I think I get so excited because it really is, all the product lines we take partner feedback and we improve and innovate or fix. But in networking, it's at the beginning of the process. So I think that's even more exciting because I feel like you might sometimes have more options open and you really have to choose carefully.
Yeah, and it's the start of an exciting new sort of product range and you're building it based on the feedback. I get that. How would you explain the MSP focus for the Datto networking range to an MSP that say used Cisco or Dratec or these well-known brands that have been around for years? How do you explain the MSP focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we typically look at the market for networking products and we see there's really two choices. There's the enterprise, which you highlighted, with the Cisco perhaps background, where maybe it's not priced the right way, the price too high for that matter, and you don't really need all those features as a small medium business. So it's a little bit overkill, and then it becomes complex to manage unnecessarily. And then at the commodity end, you might not have all the features you want. You might have a better price, but again, you might not want to it might not be priced in the way you want to consume it. So that's where the networking as a service concept comes in, where the upfront hardware fee is very low, but there's an ongoing recurring monthly fee for all the support, upgrades, all of that, the service that comes with it, a lifetime warranty, which we really think is MSP focused, and of course the cloud management on top of that, which some other solutions have or don't have. So you might be able to find that somewhere else, but we really put a lot of energy into that, and then making it really seamless to migrate between Datto products. So if you're familiar with some of our other products, getting to the networking console, interacting with it, you kind of already have a sense of how it's going to go. So there's a little bit of less of a learning curve there and an easier to manage solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm excited about the Datto networking. And I remember when it was released, it was like, how has somebody not done this before?
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that seems like a no-brainer, but
it's really unique and it's a huge opportunity for partners and for Datto. So I think that's why I get so amped up about it.
Yeah. Now you're big on feedback from end customers, from MSPs, but it's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. So is there a feature of Datto, any of the products that is awesome, but frustratingly you see the MSPs just don't get it or don't use it to its full potential?
That's a good question. I think, one thing that does frustrate me is when partners don't enable 2FA.
Right.
But this is emblematic of a larger kind of set of things, which is, we issue a lot of features like alerts, like security layers, which we have to walk a line, right, between how much do we force upon a partner, because we know it's best practice and we know it's in their best interest, or at least we believe it is, versus let them choose their own destiny, right? And so it's frustrating when they don't take advantage of those types of features. Another example would be a backup alert, right? They don't have alerts set, and so the backup's been failing, but they don't know it. And then, when they need the data, it's not there, and you're like, oh, so frustrated, because if you would have turned on the alert, you would have known. But there's only so much we can enforce. And so Datto is always, a partner-first company. So sometimes we let people choose their own adventure. Sometimes that adventure is a good one. Sometimes frustrating. So I think those are the set that really frustrate me when partners don't adopt them.
Good. I understand that. Yeah. So you're clearly a hugely smart woman, but you're working in a male-dominated industry. There's no doubt about that. I've been talking for years about women in IT. CompTIA have got a fantastic organization, advancing women in IT. What has been your experience as a smart woman working in the IT field?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I've grown up in a technical environment. I did my computer engineering degree. There was never any doubt I was going to be an engineer, but I can remember starting my computer engineering degree in university. That was the first time where I really noticed that I was in a minority. Looking around, 3 out of 10 were women, but it didn't really bother me. I think I think it's a little bit my personality. I'm very logical, very pragmatic, very efficient, and I want to sort of arrive at the best solution. And so I appreciate various viewpoints, and I can kind of tolerate a lot of discussion or noise very well because I kind of cut through it and get to the point. I think that's necessary for a product role where you have to get something built at the end of the day, and you have to sometimes push through a lot of objections or, oh, I don't know if it's possible, and worries to get it done. And I think that's my general approach in life. So I think it's my personality has served me well in just, a lot of noise doesn't really bother me. I just want to get to the right outcome. So I think I've benefited from that, but it is, it's definitely not always easy.
Yeah, and I know that your high-profile role and the work that you're doing is inspiring other women in IT, to stand up. So, thank you for that, because this industry needs to change.
Yeah.
This industry, needs to have more people like yourself in it doing it. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that viewpoint. Yeah, I do feel like that's a responsibility. You asked earlier about my day-to-day job and just sort of, being that presence, being sort of a powerful woman and modeling that for the folks at Datto, for our partners, for, even the local Boston tech scene. I do view that as part of my job. Not that it's something I don't enjoy doing. I really do. And we even have some women in tech peer forums here as well. And you noticed we had a bunch of women in the keynote yesterday, actually, for the first time. So it's something that Datto is very passionate about pushing forward as well.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate your time today. Would love to get you back on the podcast for when we've got a little bit more time to speak, because I know you were a very busy lady here today at DattoCon, but thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Richard.
Cheers. Mark Simon, MD, EMEA, Datto. How you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. A little bit tired, a little bit still taking energy from DattoCon on day 3 now, but it's been an amazing experience this week. So I really enjoyed it and looking forward to the party this evening.
Indeed. Well, your first DattoCon, of course, because you're new to the managed service industry as a whole.
Yeah, so it's actually my second.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to go to San Diego. I've been in the business a handful of weeks, actually. Recorded a podcast for Datto, which was hilarious because me and Christian Nagele talking about the business, which I couldn't really contribute very much. So we tried it. It's like, what would someone who doesn't know anything about the managed service industry say about DattoCon? So we tried it from that angle, and it actually worked quite well. But yeah, you're right. This is my first kind of proper involvement, and it's been really thrilling actually to be part of what has been an event that's actually gone past our expectations so far, just in terms of numbers, just the engagement, the networking, all those kind of things that we've seen. And really enjoyed it. And my sense is just talking to dozens of partners that they are hopefully feeling the same way.
Yeah. So what brought you to Datto? Your background, you've got an interesting path that brought you here, I should say, including living and working in different countries.
Yeah. So it's not really I suppose a traditional path. I don't come from the IT industry at all. I've spent my career working in different industry. I was 15 years in the market research industry, where I was early days with a company called Taluna, which was a French company, 10 employees when I joined, about 1,500 when I left. And we'd expanded all over the world, actually. It's an online research technology company. And I'd been lucky enough to run the UK and take the company public and then take it private, and then ran global product for that business, and ended up actually for the last 6 years living in the States, running our North American operation, and wanted to come back to the UK after 6 years for personal reasons. But Datto was a real success story actually in the part of the US where I lived, in Connecticut, just down the road from where I was living. And some of my team members actually gone to work for Datto. Absolutely loved it. We're all still there, even 5 or 6 years later, and just got chatting to them about expansion globally and what that looks like and how to do it well. And they said to me, look, are you thinking about going back to England anytime soon? And actually I was, probably not quite as quickly as it turned out, but ended up chatting to them, sort of agreeing in January. And then in May, the family and I were back in London, back in our old house. It's like the last 6 years have been a dream, just really happy to be back in Europe and getting stuck into the Datto adventure.
Oh, it's a wonderful story. And so are you settling in back in London?
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly we slipped back in, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, children are very adaptable, but even adults, it's amazing, back to the old house routines and friends and so forth. But I genuinely, days.
Yeah.
Some things you miss and some things you really appreciate about being back in England. But we're really pleased we made the move, not least because Datto has just been such an amazing business to be part of, as well as the community of MSPs as a whole, which I've really enjoyed getting to learn to know. There's a few things about it that I mentioned yesterday in opening remarks, just that sort of like sharing, that sense of community, the curiosity, the willingness to help each other. I've never seen it in any other industry. And I was actually asking somebody else yesterday who knows the IT industry from top to bottom, and they were saying, actually, yes, the MSP community is very unique in that respect. So no, I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Now, your role, what does it entail on a day-to-day basis?
Well, no day is the same. What I've been focusing on in the first few months, and it's actually 6 months next week that I've been at Datto, is really about building a world-class team. And that's not just about hiring new people, although there's been quite a lot of that. We've brought some really strong senior leadership in from all over the business. It's been making sure people are in the right jobs, that they're kind of trained and supported, and their missions are clear, whether what success looks like for them. So really, the first 6 months has just been very much about spending time with potential new hires, existing ones, and I'd say I probably do 8 to 10 interviews a week, and the rest of the time is spent coaching and looking at the team and how to move things around.
Yeah, varied work then.
Yes, it is. And internationally as well. So
Yes.
Although the UK is our largest part of our EMEA business, we still have very robust businesses in the Nordics, where we just actually opened a new office, or we're in the process of opening a new office in Benelux, where Amsterdam is our base, and in the DACH region, where Munich is our kind of jumping off point. So all of those are really important to us. And then we have a considerable partner base through our distribution network in Southern Europe, so France and Italy and so forth. And yeah, it's really exciting, really enjoying seeing the different phases of the MSP community in different countries.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Datto in Europe over the next few years?
Well, I think it depends which country you look at. Sometimes it's more of where is that particular market at in terms of its adoption of the managed services model. So in some countries, France is a good example. We're sitting here in Paris today. They're very much at the beginning of that journey. Mm-hmm. So things that we might take for granted, let's say in the UK or the US, the idea of business continuity, disaster recovery, is just less well known. So there's an educational side. In some other areas, it's brand building, where Datto is not a well-known brand. Autotask actually had a pretty well-known brand in Europe. They did very well on that side. So we have a good sort of base to go from, but Datto as a brand itself is not that well-known in some of the other markets. So a lot of it's around building trust, credibility around the brand, and about what we stand for. But whenever we talk to partners that we're setting up in Copenhagen, for example, or we're investing more in France, the reaction is overwhelmingly positive that a large North American company is taking EMEA seriously.
Yeah. And as a non-techie coming into a techie industry, talking to a techie geek now, what about all these acronyms we've got? Have you been confused by any of them yet?
Terrifying. If you talk about an MSP using an RMM through a PSA under an SLA, you can get sort of quite bewildered sometimes. I think any new industry is going to be rife with acronyms. We have an amazing technical team, whether it's our sales engineers or a product team or our success team. I'm learning a lot. But I think it's more about what's the culture of the business? What do we represent for MSPs? How can we help them? I don't think you need to be deeply technical. And as soon as it gets to that point, at least I know who to call to get in the room. But I'm getting better. I think the ability to learn is still there, even though I've been around the block a few times.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, I know you've got a lot on today. Thank you for putting on another brilliant DattoCon.
Thank you.
Really appreciate being invited back again, and I wish you all the best of luck with your new role.
Thank you so much. Well, great to have you here, and look forward to seeing you next time around.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.
Thanks.
I'm here with Christian Nagele. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Richard. Good to be back here.
Well, you were a guest, you and Ian were a guest almost a year ago now when we were at DattoCon Barcelona. And you talked about the journey from Centre Stage from being a cloud-based RMM to where it is now.
Yep.
How has your baby, Centre Stage, which is now Datto's RMM product, how have you seen that grown in the last 12 months?
Well, let me ask you a question, Richard. Right, sat here a year on from Barcelona. What's your take on how far it's come?
I would say that it is becoming not quite ubiquitous, but I am seeing a ton of MSPs using it. Feedback has been good. I know you've done some stuff on the UI and what have you, so feedback has been very positive.
Yeah, good to hear. So I know I always caveat or preface my comments with it's a bit weird to be excited about RMM, but
no, we're RMM geeks. We are
RMM geeks. So look, I think almost as we said last year when Ian was here with us, we've sort of lived quite a journey with what is now Datto RMM, and yeah, look, it's been similarly upward curve over the last 12 months. So we set out with Datto to essentially make Datto RMM the leading MSP focused RMM on the market by the end of 2020. So we have this project called Datto RMM 2020. So that's a fairly bold statement to achieve market leadership. But I think the investment that's going into the product is testament to the fact we're serious about it. And so very much from a product-led perspective, there's been huge improvements, enhancements, and acceleration through the last 12 months, which is reflected in the numbers. So every month, hundreds of MSPs are joining the Datto RMM platform. It's a technology that is challenging to design, build, deliver, and support for all the RMM vendors. So we have a lot of respect for our competition. But I think where we started the company all those years ago has put us in a really good spot to both deliver a world-class RMM. We are delivering a world-class RMM, but also start to look beyond the traditional sort of RMM genre into what does RMM look like in 3, 5, 7 years. So we're already starting that thought process already, but not getting ahead of ourselves and just delivering on that core RMM sort of product feature set to ensure customers can deliver with that RMM what they need to deliver. So numbers speak for themselves, but it's been a superb year, and I think the buzz here at DattoCon is a reflection of the buzz both internally at Datto and externally around Datto RMM as it starts to infuse itself into other parts of both the Datto portfolio, but also we continue to build good integrations with competitive PSAs, for example. So remains a key part of the strategy. So progress on all fronts, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'm going to make you blush here.
Yeah,
you're something of a visionary. I think you proved that. You and Ian went all those years ago. You went down the cloud route, which is now the normal. So, you talked about RMM in 3-5 years or whatever. How do you see RMM changing over the next few years?
Yeah, so I think it's a very live debate within Datto. I would also credit my co-founder Ian more the visionary status, but just along for the ride. Look, there's a couple of things that are clearly emerging. One is it's as much about the end user now as it is about the device. So, the management of network devices and Windows laptops and servers is a very well-defined requirement. It could always be done better, quicker, with more automation. But I think now the rise of the end user who's sat behind the Windows laptop or the MacBook Pro, or the mobile device is becoming far more important in the world of the MSP to educate, to support, to secure that end user. So that's clearly an upside with an RMM tool. It gives you a footprint on that end user's machine and therefore a window into their world and almost a two-way communication channel. So already starting to think, how does actually an RMM tool move beyond the device into more helping MSPs engage with their end user, just for feedback, support, all the usual things. The explosion of internet-connected devices, you can't move but for hearing for stats around, the rapid growth in internet connected devices. our view, be interested in your take, is that the Internet of Things, is quite enterprise and consumer focused at the moment, not necessarily SMB, but it's definitely coming, and that can be anything from just kiosks or just unmanned internet-enabled machines. And I think our ability to plug in millions of internet-enabled devices into the Datto RMM platform is going to, again, be a key part of our differentiation going forward. So, Ian and the guys designed and created the product to be able to essentially consume, any device if it was sat on the internet, and that very much remains part of our mantra. We've just obviously majored on Windows, Mac, Linux, and SNMP-enabled machines. So I think the Internet of Things is clearly a movement, and so I think that'll obviously be a key part of it. And probably thirdly, I don't want to overplay the AI card, so I'd call it probably collective intelligence. So that the value of the information that we hold in Datto RMM, because it's a true cloud platform, connecting millions of devices, and I think we're collecting something along the lines of 5 billion metrics a day now. The ability with the upside of Amazon Web Services has given us almost infinite compute, infinite storage to actually collate and sort of order and assess and review that data and present, where relevant, some of that back to our MSPs, so they can start to benchmark themselves against global norms, benchmark certain customers of theirs against other customers, and start to actually define some useful business intelligence out of that. I think is going to be huge as well. And I have to say, excuse the bias, but I think we'll have a significant competitive advantage just because of the true cloud nature of the platform and the scale at which we're picking up this data.
Yeah, and I couldn't disagree. And I think actually the AI label that goes along holds it back a little bit, because people think of scenarios like the Terminator and things like that. Yeah. And of course, it's not like that at all. You're talking about using collective collective data
and that's
intelligence.
It's such an overused topic. I think we're looking at it just in terms of the collective intelligence and the benchmarking that can arise from it. And actually, we're starting to, even on the near-term roadmap, Matej talked about it, is just far more kind of long-term analytics being presented back through the Datto RMM UI, just to help people make informed business decisions based on longer-term trends. So we're already moving towards that. So it's not going to be some big kind of blanket, oh, look, here's a big AI release in Datto RMM. It's going to be an iterative. We'll just start to collect, benchmark, and present back more and more data.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about your baby, which you've let go out into the wild and grow up. Would you say he's a teenager now, maybe?
About to take its driving test, I think, and head out into the big wide world. It's probably hard to look at it.
But of course, your title within the business is Senior Director EMEA Strategy. So I want to, just in the last few minutes that we've got, sort of move across. How do you find MSP attitudes differ between businesses across Europe? So what's the difference between, say, an MSP in Germany and an MSP in the UK and an MSP in France?
That is a very good question. You specifically use the word sort of how do attitudes differ. I'd say minimally. I think the inherent sort of makeup of, the individuals that make up MSPs are very, very similar. And I'm very, I think you probably know, but I'm so sort of effusive about the MSP market. I mentioned it in all of the sessions here. I've loved working in the space, still love working in the space, and have utmost respect for all these MSPs, because they are sort of hewn from the same granite, a lot of them, in terms of their sort of natural risk-taking, the ability to set up and run their own business. So just in terms of the inherent personality traits, really similar. I think that's the thing that probably defines the market. What differs, and it's often not as much as people think, is almost the cultural impact of the different cultures more than necessarily the IT landscape. But they're not as different as I think people think. So obviously we've got a new MD now for EMEA, Simon, who has spent the last 15 years helping businesses sort of internationalize effectively. So an English chap working for a French company, most recently running their US business. So quite an interesting sort of backstory there. And he says that really it's 80% commonality and it's the last 20% of localization. And that can often be the simple side, just cultural differences, just basic things such as like really committed translation exercises. That's it. But back to your original question, like core attitude, it's pretty uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. You've opened in a new office in the Nordics.
Correct.
Can we expect more of that in the future? Can we expect offices? You've already got a number of offices around,
Yeah.
but can we expect more across Europe?
Yeah, 100%. So I think the importance to Datto of EMEA is enormous. I don't think it's a surprise to say that there are many US companies who, beyond the English-speaking territories outside of America, have struggled to execute sometimes. It just requires, ambition, intent, and the relevant investment. So EMEA is of enormous importance to Datto. Again, back to the sort of almost uniformity of our market. Ultimately, the opportunity exists wherever there are IT service providers, and they exist pretty much everywhere. So, Copenhagen is just the start. We've made no secret about the fact that some markets will be an indirect sort of distributor-led play for a time. Others will be a direct investment, as you see in the new Nordics office. But yeah, the team is being beefed up on a daily basis just to help us, execute and support MSPs across EMEA.
Yeah. So we spoke last year, we spoke again now. Should we speak in 12 months in Berlin and see where things are at?
12 months sounds good to me, if not before.
Cool, Christian. Right. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, Richard. Pleasure.
Hey folks, Richard here. Thanks for listening today. I know you've got a ton of options for who you listen to nowadays, so I really appreciate your support. Do you have any feedback on this episode? Ideas for future guests? Tweet me at Tublog using the hashtag TubTalk. I respond to every tweet and really appreciate your feedback. Hey team, this is Richard again. Just one more thing before you take off, and that is MSP Insights. Now, every Tuesday, I share my thoughts on the business of IT with you, the managed service community. Thousands of managed service providers already subscribe to MSP Insights. It's easy to sign up, easy to cancel. MSP Insights is basically a short email from me every Tuesday without fail with advice on growing your IT business, plus cool resources I've found, discovered, or started exploring that week. It's kind of like my diary of cool things and often includes articles or books I've read, tools I've discovered, and events I think you'd be interested in, often sent to me by my friends and Tub Talk podcast guests. So if that sounds fun, a short tiny bite of MSP goodness every Tuesday, and you'd like to try it out, just go to go.tub.co/Tuesday. That's go.tub.co/Tuesday. Drop in your email and you'll get the very next one. Thanks for listening.